these long stone steps going up, and there was Hitch sitting at the table all by himself with his big chump chop.
Anne Baxter stunned the world with a performance so daring, it almost got the film banned. She wore costumes that pushed Hollywood's strict rules to the limit, clashed with a director known for breaking actors, and worked through brutal heat that would break most people. Behind the scenes, her life was just as wild, full of bold choices, shocking risks, and stories you'd never expect. By the end of the video, you'll know why Anne Baxter left nothing to the imagination. So let's get started. Anne Baxter was born on May 7, 1923, in Michigan City, Indiana. She grew up in a life of luxury and privilege. Her father, Kenneth Baxter, was an important executive at Seagram's distillery, and her mother, Catherine, came from a well-known family. When Anne was just 6 years old, her family moved to New York City. This move gave her access to amazing opportunities that few could imagine. She went to the prestigious Brearley School, where she met other children from wealthy and influential families. Her family had homes in both Manhattan and Westchester County, allowing Anne to enjoy the best of both worlds. While many struggled during the 1920s, Anne's childhood was filled with cultural events and the finest education money could buy. Anne's artistic side was also shaped by her grandfather, Frank Lloyd Wright, one of America's greatest architects. He introduced her to creativity in a way that few children experience. While other kids played with dolls, Anne was fascinated by his building designs and loved going to cultural events with him. Anne's dream of becoming an actress began when she was 10 years old. She watched a Broadway show starring Helen Hayes, and it changed her life. She decided right then that she wanted to act. Just 3 years later, at age 13, Anne made her Broadway debut in a play called Seen But Not Heard. This was a huge achievement for someone so young. The critics, who were usually tough on child actors, were surprisingly kind and praised her performance. In 1939, she was cast as Katharine Hepburn's younger sister in The Philadelphia Story. But things didn't go as planned. Hepburn wasn't happy with her acting, and Anne was replaced before the show opened. Even though it was a tough experience, it pushed Anne to think about Hollywood. When Anne Baxter was just 16, she got a chance that most actors could only dream of. She became one of 5 finalists for the role of Mrs. De Winter in Rebecca, 1939, competing against big names like Joan Fontaine and Vivien Leigh. Her screen test was impressive. People could see her raw talent and depth even at such a young age. But Alfred Hitchcock, the film's director, thought she was too young for the role. Joan Fontaine got the part, but this wasn't the end for Anne. In fact, it was just the beginning. Hollywood noticed her potential, and her screen test became a piece of history, showing a young actress who could already hold her own alongside experienced stars. That same screen test opened a big door for Anne. In 1940, 20th Century Fox signed her to a 7-year contract. They wasted no time putting her to work. Her first big movie was 20 Mule Team with Wallace Beery, where she got 4th billing even though she was only 17. It wasn't a major role, but it gave her valuable experience. Fox was smart with her career. They carefully picked roles that helped her grow as an actress, moving her from small parts to leading roles over time. In 1942, Anne's career hit a turning point when Orson Welles cast her in The Magnificent Ambersons. Working with Welles was tough. He was known for his perfectionism, often demanding many takes and complicated shots. For Anne, it was a huge challenge, but she rose to the occasion. In one memorable scene, her character sat quietly on a staircase while a dance played out in the background. It was subtle but powerful, showing just how much emotion she could convey without saying a word. Even though the studio cut the film down significantly, her performance stood out. At just 23 years old, Anne Baxter took on a role that would define her career, playing Sophie MacDonald in The Razor's Edge. The part was so dark and emotional that many actresses had refused it, afraid it would harm their careers. For Anne, It was a chance to break free from the librarian image the studio head had given her. She dove into the role with everything she had. She spent weeks visiting rehabilitation centers to understand alcoholism, lost 16 pounds to look the part, and worked with a dialogue coach to bring Sophie's tragic story to life. When she walked onto the set for the first time, her transformation was so extreme that the director didn't even recognize her. Sophie's story was heartbreaking. She was a happy wife and mother until a car accident took her husband and child. After that, her life spiraled into alcoholism and despair. Anne's performance in one scene, where Sophie learns about her family's death, left everyone speechless. She drew on her own hidden pain from losing her younger brother, a tragedy she had never talked about before. The scene was filmed in one take, and even the crew couldn't hold back their tears. Anne stayed in character throughout the 47-day shoot, so deeply connected to Sophie's pain that her parents became worried and visited the set to check on her. All the hard work paid off. In 1947, Anne won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, becoming one of the youngest winners ever. Her acceptance speech was short and emotional, just 42 seconds. But she used it to honor her late brother, speaking about him publicly for the first time. The win was especially sweet because Anne had been overlooked for earlier roles in The Magnificent Ambersons and Guest in the House. Now, she was finally recognized as one of Hollywood's best. The success of The Razor's Edge completely changed Anne's career. Her salary skyrocketed from $400 to $3,000 a week, and she gained the power to choose her roles. But the experience of playing Sophie stayed with her. She avoided similar tragic roles for years, worried about being typecast. Later, Anne admitted that playing Sophie had drained her emotionally in a way no other role ever did. Even though she acted for decades after, she felt nothing ever matched the depth of that performance. Sophie MacDonald remained the role that defined her talent and made her unforgettable. Anne Baxter got the role of Eve Harrington in All About Eve because of a series of unexpected events. Jean Crane was supposed to play the role, but she had to step away because of her pregnancy. That's when director Joseph L. Mankiewicz turned to Baxter. He thought she was perfect for the part, calling her performance style a bitch virtuosity. Another reason he chose her was because she looked like Claudette Colbert, who had originally been cast as Margot Channing. Working with Bette Davis, who ended up playing Margot, wasn't without its challenges. Davis had been seen as box office poison before this role, but she proved her worth on set. Though many warned Baxter about Davis's difficult reputation, Davis acted like a true professional. Their on-screen rivalry felt real because of their age difference. Davis was 42, and Baxter was 27. That dynamic gave their scenes extra tension. Off-screen, Davis married Gary Merrill, her co-star, who played Bill, right after filming. Later, she joked to Baxter, "He didn't marry Bette Davis, he married Margot Channing." The Academy Awards that year brought drama of their own. Baxter decided to compete in the Best Actress category alongside Davis instead of going for Best Supporting Actress. This caused controversy because it split the votes between them, especially with Gloria Swanson also nominated for Sunset Boulevard. In the end, Judy Holliday won for Born Yesterday. Years later, Baxter admitted she had made a mistake, saying, "I should have accepted another supporting Oscar." Davis, with her usual sharp wit, agreed, saying, "Yes, she should have." Baxter's performance as Eve Harrington became iconic. Critics loved how she shifted between appearing sweet and innocent to showing her cunning, manipulative side. One standout moment was the bathroom scene, where Eve's mask completely slipped, revealing her true nature. Her portrayal earned her a place among the greatest villains in movie history, but it also typecast her in similar roles afterward. Some felt her villainy was too obvious, while others thought her layers of ambition and deceit were brilliantly done. Either way, she created a character that audiences and critics would never forget. In 1954, Anne Baxter landed the role of Queen Nefertiri in The Ten Commandments. The way she got the part was unusual. When she met Cecil B. DeMille, the famous director, he insisted she didn't need any fake Egyptian nose prosthetics. He even banged his desk to make sure she understood he wanted her Irish nose just as it was. The role wasn't easy. Baxter had to transform from a charming princess into a bitter and vengeful queen. She played two sides of the character perfectly: Moses' love interest and Ramesses' unhappy wife. To prepare, she studied ancient Egyptian history and royal manners for hours. Critics loved her performance, saying she brought something fresh and modern to the story, even though it was rooted in the Bible. Baxter's costumes caused a big stir. Her outfits, especially the daring blue dress, pushed the limits of what was allowed in movies back then. Hollywood had strict rules about what could be shown, so the costume team had to get creative. They used skin-colored undergarments to make her look elegant while staying modest enough for censors. One scene was particularly tricky. She wore a nearly see-through dress, which required careful camera work to avoid any controversy. The costume designer made over 30 outfits for her, with each one showing more skin as her character became more driven by jealousy and revenge. The blue dress was so bold that some theaters almost cut the scene, but DeMille stood his ground and defended it as part of the art. Making the movie wasn't smooth sailing. Baxter found it hard to work with DeMille, who she thought was a bit old-fashioned. Still, she admitted his style worked for the film. She also had disagreements with Charlton Heston, who played Moses. He liked to fully dive into his role, while Baxter preferred a more dramatic, theatrical approach. Filming in Egypt made things even tougher. Baxter had to act in heavy costumes and thick makeup, while temperatures soared above 120 degrees. It was exhausting, but she delivered a performance that audiences loved. When The Ten Commandments came out in 1956, it became a huge hit. It earned $122.7 million during its first run, an incredible amount for the time. Baxter's role was so memorable that she won a Laurel Award for Top Female Dramatic Performance. The movie became a tradition, airing on TV every year during Passover and Easter since 1973. In 1999, the Library of Congress added it to its list of historically important films. Moreover, Anne Baxter's romance with John Hodiak started like a fairy tale. They met on the set of Sunday Dinner for a Soldier in 1944, and the chemistry was instant. By July 7, 1946, they were married in a small, private ceremony at her parents' home in Burlingame, California. It seemed like the perfect match. Anne was fresh off her Oscar win for The Razor's Edge, and John was gaining fame after starring in Hitchcock's Lifeboat. They even welcomed a daughter, Katrina, in 1951. But behind the scenes, things weren't as ideal as they seemed. In her memoirs, Anne later described their marriage as being stuck in the longest winter in the world, full of silence and growing distance. Their relationship ended in divorce in 1953, a decision that left a lasting mark on both their lives. To the public, Anne cited basic incompatibility as the reason. But her autobiography revealed a more personal truth. She admitted, "I had loved John as much, but to my shame, I'd picked a fight at last in order to unfreeze the word divorce." The heartbreak didn't end there. Just 2 years later, in 1955, John died suddenly of a heart attack at the young age of 41 while filming On the Threshold of Space. He left behind little more than a modest $25,000 estate and a grieving family. For Anne, the loss was devastating, especially since their daughter Katrina was only 4 years old at the time. After John's death, Anne's life became a delicate balancing act between motherhood and her career. She continued acting, taking on memorable roles like the seductive Nefertiri in The Ten Commandments, 1956. But her personal life became more complicated. She had a surprising relationship with Filippo Autelitano, who was linked to the Gambino crime family. Then, in 1960, she shocked everyone by marrying rancher Randolph Galt and leaving Hollywood behind to live on a remote cattle station in Australia. It was a bold move, trading the glamour of stardom for the rugged life on a 37,000-acre ranch. Throughout her life, Anne's relationships reflected her complex journey. Before and between her marriages, she was romantically linked to several notable figures. She dated Peter Lawford in the early 1940s, had a brief fling with Yul Brynner in the 1950s, and was rumored to have been close to Gregory Peck during the filming of Yellow Sky in 1948. Her last marriage, to businessman David Klee in 1977, ended in tragedy. Just months after their wedding, Klee died unexpectedly. The couple had been renovating a home in Easton, Connecticut, but Klee passed away before he ever saw it completed. These heartbreaks shaped Anne's later years, making her more private and cautious about love. After dominating the big screen, Baxter made a bold move to television in the 1960s, a decision that turned out to be incredibly successful. Her first notable TV appearance was as a mystery guest on What's My Line? But what really stood out were her playful and villainous roles that marked her small-screen transformation. In 1966, she stepped into the colorful world of camp television with her role as Zelda the Great in 2 episodes of Batman. Later, she returned to the show as Olga, Queen of the Cossacks, sharing the screen with Vincent Price's Egghead in 3 episodes during the 3rd season. These quirky roles showed a completely new side to the Oscar-winning actress, proving that she could adapt and shine even in the changing entertainment landscape. In the late 1960s and 1970s, Baxter became a regular face on television with guest appearances that showcased her incredible range. In 1967, she joined My 3 Sons as a glamorous engineer chasing Fred MacMurray's character, delighting viewers with her comedic talent. In 1971, she took on a darker role in Columbo, Requiem for a Falling Star, playing a murderous film star. The role seemed to mirror parts of her own Hollywood journey, adding depth to her performance. Baxter also became a frequent guest and occasional host on The Mike Douglas Show, where her charm and ability to connect with audiences in unscripted moments shone through. Her role in The Name of the Game in 1969 earned her an Emmy nomination, proving that her television work was just as respected as her film career. In 1983, Baxter took on what would become her final regular role in the TV series Hotel. She replaced her All About Eve co-star, Bette Davis, as Victoria Cabot, the sophisticated owner of a luxury hotel. Baxter appeared in 22 episodes before her death in 1985, bringing elegance and strength to the character. Hollywood insiders couldn't ignore the irony of her stepping into a role initially played by Davis, whom she had famously starred opposite years earlier. The series, which ran for 5 seasons and 114 episodes, became a hit for ABC, following the success of Dynasty. Baxter's performance added depth to the show, and when Davis's health improved, producers decided to keep Baxter in the role, a testament to how seamlessly she made the character her own. In her later years, Baxter continued to prove her versatility by balancing TV roles with stage performances. In 1971, she played Margot Channing in the musical Applause, a stage adaptation of All About Eve. It felt like a full-circle moment, as she took on the role originally portrayed by Bette Davis in the classic film. Her final screen role came in 1984, when she played Irene Adler in Sherlock Holmes and The Masks of Death. Irene Adler, one of literature's most iconic female characters, was a fitting choice for Baxter, who brought intelligence and complexity to the role. Her career and life took a sudden, tragic turn on December 4, 1985. While in New York City during a filming break for Hotel, Baxter collapsed on Madison Avenue as she attempted to hail a taxi. She was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital, where doctors diagnosed a brain aneurysm. The scene, her collapsing on a busy street, was a stark reminder of how quickly life can change. Despite the best efforts of medical professionals, she remained unresponsive. For 8 days, her family stayed by her side, hoping for a miracle. But it became clear that recovery was impossible. On December 12, 1985, her family made the heart-wrenching decision to remove life support. She passed away at the age of 62, the same age her famous grandfather, architect Frank Lloyd Wright, had been when he entered one of the most creative phases of his career. Her death came just before the holiday season, a time she usually spent with her 3 daughters at her Connecticut home. The news of her passing sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Her Hotel co-stars, including James Brolin and Connie Sellecca, paused production to honor her memory with a special service. ABC aired a tribute episode featuring highlights from her performances, celebrating her contributions to the show. Perhaps the most touching tribute came from Bette Davis, her one-time rival from All About Eve. In her statement, Davis called Baxter one of the most beautiful and talented actresses of our time. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences honored her with a special screening of The Razor's Edge, the film that earned Baxter her Oscar. Her ashes were taken to the Frank Lloyd Wright estate in Wisconsin, where she was interred near her grandfather's former gravesite. A memorial tree was planted in her honor, providing a lasting tribute to 2 extraordinary artists,